special, Jean. And if you stop fighting that force inside you, if you embrace it, you will possess the very power of a god.
She'll kill us all. Tell me how we fix this, Charles. Tell me what to do. I don't know what to do.
And what they don't understand, what they fear, and what they fear, we seek to destroy.
Dark Phoenix is the final film in the X-Men Fox Marvel Cinematic Universe and follows after the events of X-Men Apocalypse. At this point, the X-Men are kind of seen as heroes by the human population, so it's helping with the image of mutants all over, and because of this view, the X-Men are asked to assist in a rescue mission that's going on in space. During this rescue op, Jean Grey accidentally absorbs this intergalactic force that begins to make her more unstable as a person, but also increases her powers and abilities exponentially. The only X-Men movies that I've reviewed thus far on the channel are Logan and Deadpool 2, you know, offshoot stories that have little to nothing to do with the core story of this universe, so I don't believe that I've ever actually talked about my feelings towards these movies as a whole with you guys, so, you know, there's never a better time to do it than now, so here it is. I love quite a few of the X-Men movies, and I've always thought that overall, the franchise is good. It's really good. I do have the same issue that many people do, which is that there's no continuity with this franchise. Choices made in each film would consistently be changed in one of the subsequent films, and whether it was changing actors, randomly changing character roles, and just completely ignoring the established canon, you know, just there was no continuity. And actually, one of my favorite film pundits, John Campea, actually always says continuity schmontinuity with in regards to the X-Men universe, because he basically says that's their motto for their universe, is just, you know, fuck continuity, we're just gonna go in, have fun, it's probably not gonna make sense, but you know what, we're gonna hopefully make a good movie out of the next one. But just even with all of that, the movies were still, for the most part, good, with some even being considered great by many people. And so going into this movie, I was worried about that happening again, where it would just, you know, continuity didn't fucking really matter. But not as worried as I was when I heard that Simon Kinberg was directing this film. Now, I've got nothing against Kinberg himself. I mean, he's proved himself many times as a screenwriter and producer, especially with this franchise, since he has either written or produced, or produced most of these films ever since X-Men Last Stand. So, but as many critics and film pundits and just simply film fans know, you don't just hand a first-time director a big-budget film on their first go. You gotta give them something with a small budget first to see if he's ready for that next step. And then if he's not, then you just, every once in a while, you give him a small-budget film, and, you know, hopefully he gets better and better. Otherwise, he'll hopefully just stay in that zone where it's just like, okay films. But anyway, letting him direct this movie was easily seen as a disaster, and filming hadn't even started yet. And then for the past year, inside sources for outlets like Variety, Collider, Hollywood Reporter, The John Campea Show, and a few others that I haven't mentioned and also am not thinking of off the top of my head, had talked about how the film was a disaster, and that Fox at the time was scrambling to make it better, even adding in extensive reshoots. And so those of us who had heard the news were very nervous about seeing Dark Phoenix, but of course we would see it anyway because it's the end of an era, and also we wanted to see where it was going, not because we were clamoring for it like with Endgame, how we needed to see it, but rather because we were curious and maybe because of the fond memories to the other films, but not necessarily because we were fully anticipating Dark Phoenix. Now, before I get into my thoughts on this film, I do want to throw out my normal disclaimer for all of you uninitiated. So, the way that I break down my thoughts on a film is I do a pro and con list. It helps me compartmentalize the good and the bad, in my opinion, and it makes it, I feel like it makes it easier for me to actually convey to you guys what I think on a movie. And while I try to keep the sections separate, if I can make a pro and con work off of each other, or maybe if they're intrinsically tied together, you know, I will take advantage of that. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything that's going on the channel. And also, it really helps out the channel a lot. Okay, so there's your disclaimer and the reminder to subscribe. Let's go ahead and get into my review of Dark Phoenix. Because of the reports on the quality of the film before it even came out, I was honestly expecting to react the same way that I did with Glass earlier this year, which was, you know, where I left the theater really pissed off. But this wasn't a movie that was anger-inducing, luckily. But honestly, I would have rather felt emotion after this movie. I just found it to be very boring, and I know this movie wasn't originally going to be the end of the franchise, but it is, and it just feels like we built up to nothing. Nothing of interest really happens in Dark Phoenix, at least not until the third act, which I'll get into later. And a good portion of the film is spent with us just watching these characters talk about how Jean and her powers will destroy the X-Men, but more in the our band is going to be breaking up because you're sleeping with that girl kind of thing. And other than one thing that couldn't be helped, I never really felt like this was something that warranted a kind of Captain America Civil War feel, where mutants are torn between helping Jean and just straight up killing her. I figured, hey, in the other films that preceded this one, that preceded Dark Phoenix and it's in the franchise's nearly 2-decade run, there have been others who have done way worse than Jean has done and will do for the rest of the film, so why is this the thing that'll tear the X-Men apart? They do very little with Jean's situation as well, both in this film and back, I don't remember what year it was. I think it was like 2006, 2007, but anyway, same with X-Men The Last Stand. They both failed to go really deep into the Phoenix Force and what it means for Jean Grey herself. There are fleeting moments where she wonders if she can control herself, or where she worries that if she decides to give in, maybe she'll lose her friends at that time. These ideas and more are explored in the Dark Phoenix run that this movie's based off of, and they aren't really used in... No, they're not used at all in X-Men The Last Stand, and they're barely used in Dark Phoenix here. They just make Jean basically a ticking time bomb, which does work in a couple of scenes, but then just gets repetitive after a while. And I touched on the fact that this is Kinberg's first film that he's directing. There's a reason why you never start out with a big budget film. You may get really lucky and happen to pick a great person with amazing directorial sensibilities, but honestly, that shot is super ultra mega rare. And this movie feels like it's from a first-timer. You can tell that he doesn't know how to handle an action set piece. He doesn't know how to spice up dialogue-heavy scenes and just sticks with 2 camera angles. Right here and right here. Here. Basically, you can tell that he doesn't know what to do with the camera, and he doesn't know how to position cameras to get the most effect out of a scene. With the extensive reshoots that this film went through, it can be very noticeable when they appear. And I have to congratulate my wife on this because she noticed this before I did. She noticed that in certain scenes and shots, Sophie Turner's eyebrows would be a different style and or color. And I'm sure that there are other tells, but once you notice that something's off like that, it just makes the film more insufferable. And just, I don't know, it just shows that there was no possible way that this was going to be a cohesive movie, especially with a few other things, like some people start varying in weight size, some people's accents start getting a little muddled, like I know Sophie Turner kind of sounded a little too Sansa Stark in a few areas where her eyebrows were a red color, and then she sounded fine whenever they were like a darker brown. So I don't know, it was just weird for me. But anyway, let me touch on a positive real quick. So, despite all that thing about the reshoots, however, that doesn't mean that all of the reshoots were bad. And that's where this gets into the third act, like I mentioned earlier. And it involves the train sequence that we see in the trailers. That entire section has more excitement, entertainment, and thrills than any other parts of the film. They actually start getting more creative with the mutant abilities. The sequences are actually structured well with cinematography and editing. It really feels like a different movie. I'm pretty sure that they pulled a Rogue One, where Gareth Edwards finished everything, and then they wanted to reshoot, and I think they brought in, I forgot what the guy's name was, but I don't feel like checking it right now. I don't want to waste time doing that. But anyway, yeah, that whole thing with that. Easily the biggest disappointing character is Jessica Chastain's character. She has a major contribution to the movie, which I will not spoil, but her goals are very important to the story, and she gets a lot of screen time, so it really made her presence unbearable, even, dare I say, disposable. They try to make her come across as an influence on Jean and Jean's behavior, and I don't know, they just have her coming across as a stiff character, so she's not emoting in any way, so it's just really boring to watch, and because she has so much screen time, yeah, it just touches back into that whole unbearable, disposable category. A major positive for the film, in my opinion, is some of the acting, especially for Sophie Turner herself. She easily gives a top 3 in the film sort of performance. She has to go through many different emotions super fast, and it never really came across as messy or as though she was not able to fully commit. And also, James McAvoy also delivers another outstanding performance as Xavier. This is the best performance in the entire film, and he's just one of those actors who always gives an amazing performance, no matter what he's in, and no matter if he's given great or shitty dialogue, he just always delivers. And those are my thoughts on Dark Phoenix. The highlights for me, as I said, were the acting and that third act portion that's so obviously a reshoot that it felt like a completely different movie, but the negatives sadly overcame the positives for me. There were just too many issues that were honestly, for the most part, tied back to the fact that Kinberg was writing and directing this film. Personally, for me, this is my least favorite X-Men movie, and that makes me sad. Sad that I watched this franchise for 2 decades, and it ended so lacklusterly. I mean, on the ride home from the theater, I was talking to my wife, who still has not seen but a couple of X-Men films, just the 2 Deadpool movies and Logan, and now Dark Phoenix. And despite telling her that the X-Men franchise is really good, and us talking about how she finds the idea of mutants refreshing in the oversaturated market of MCU films, mainly because she doesn't find heavyweights like Captain America or Iron Man interesting, I ended up telling her that in the moment, I told her that Dark Phoenix kind of made the franchise pointless, and so that made her enthusiasm for watching the franchise which was already a bit low, go even lower. But I'll tell you guys exactly what I told her afterwards. This that's just me in the moment. I will always go back to the X-Men franchise because they have delivered in the past with the majority of films. It's just that it's like how I felt when Game of Thrones ended. I said that the last season made the entire show pointless, so there was no reason in the long run to actually rewatch it, but that's not really how I will feel in the long run, you know, especially because, hey, I love the first 7 seasons of Game of Thrones. You know, why stop loving them just because of one lackluster season? I will go back to Game of Thrones, I will go back to X-Men, the Fox X-Men universe. I just need a little bit of time, and when I do actually get around to doing that, I will come back with more reviews for you guys, and they will all be on the X-Men franchise. It'll probably be a little bit, but I would still love to do that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't hesitate to hit that like button, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything that's going on in the channel. I just remember I said that earlier. I should have just said, damn it, I hope you hit that subscribe button, please. Damn it. What was the other stuff? Oh, yeah, and don't forget to keep the conversation going on down below in the comment section. I really enjoy hearing what you guys think about the topics and films that I talk about in these videos. Farewell until the next video, all you casual moviegoers and movie fans alike, and keep on being awesome.